2020 Game of the Year. We are here, 4th annual Game of the Year. This is one of my favorite videos to make all year, and I'm here with Brian.
What's going on?
Jake.
Hey guys.
Jeremy.
What is up?
And I'm Chris. This is Cohesive Friendship Unit's 2020 Game of the Year. We do the same 3 questions every year, and that's going to be no exception. We are going to talk about games that we wish we had played. So if people say, oh, why wasn't Ghost of Tsushima your Game of the Year? Well, that we're going to say we didn't play it, and that's why it's not it. Then we're going to talk about our favorite games that came out in 2020. And finally, we're going to talk about our favorite games that we played in the year 2020. So that lets us, shed some light on other great games that didn't come out in 2020. And yeah, if you want to see more on our games of the year, more reviews that we're going to be releasing, please subscribe, throw us a like if you found this helpful, and let us know down below what your game of the year was. So first question, what games did we miss out on? What games did you miss out on, Jeramey? I know this was the last thing you were constructing.
That's right. I was scrambling as we were preparing to shoot. I considered Animal Crossing. Kind of bummed that I missed out on that one. It felt like it was a fun kind of community thing that everyone was doing at the beginning of quarantine. So a little bit of regret there. But for me, I'm actually kind of surprised that I missed out on playing Ori and the Will of the Wisps. I got really into Hollow Knight last year, and that was probably my most anticipated game. And I just somehow it slipped me by.
I forgot about that game. I actually want to retroactively add that to my list when I get to it.
I know, right?
What about you, Jake?
I can't believe Jay didn't play Animal Crossing. That still shocks me.
I know.
That's the only thing that got me through the beginning of quarantine. But I have a handful of games that I missed. There was actually a good amount of games, but my top one is Hades. A good Supergiant game that I am very sad that I missed. More recently, I've been sad that I don't have a PlayStation 5 and I can't play Demon Souls, because a lot of people have been playing that, Chris. So feeling a little left out. But those are my 2 big ones. Since I did get VR, I'm going to just shout out that I didn't get to play Squadrons. It didn't look like something that would really keep my attention that much, but I would have liked to get my hands on it at least for a couple hours to try it out. But my big missed games this year was Hades, that I will probably be picking up at some point over the Christmas break.
All right, what about you, Brian?
I'd have to go with Kerbal Space Program 2, because originally it was supposed to come out this spring and then it got delayed, and then let me get the sequence of events right. So it got delayed the first time, and then they gutted the dev, and then it got delayed the second time, and now it's not coming out till 2022 if it comes out at all. But beyond that, not really a whole lot. I mean, I Cyberpunk looked kind of interesting, but I'm kind of glad I didn't buy it.
Yeah, don't worry. We're going to have a nice, fat, juicy review of Cyberpunk. Maybe it'll come up later in this conversation. Maybe not. No Flight Simulator?
Simulators are really to get the most out of it, you have to kind of be into whatever it is that you're simulating. I love Train Simulator because that's just my thing, but for the vast majority of people, it is not an enjoyable experience. I think that it would probably not, you see a lot of the renders and stuff, or people reviewing it and it looks gorgeous, but that's just not the hardware that I have. So I'm not sure. A lot of the stuff with simulators is kind of the immersion, and that can get wrecked really fast if you're stuttering or if you're having low res textures or just stupid shit like that. So I mean, it would probably be fun if I had a joystick or something decent to actually play it with that's not a keyboard. But I'm not really upset that I didn't get to play it this year. Because it'll be around, it'll only get better. That's the new model with it. So it's just like anything else. It'll be a DLC fest, but I'm sure the base game will be pretty damn good for several years to come.
Sure. And I only have two games personally that I kind of wish that I had gotten an opportunity to play. I mean, this year it was probably my most fortunate year for playing games. I mean, there was an endless amount of time inside, and tons of new hardware. So for me, I really just missed Doom Eternal and Ghost of Tsushima. And I'm calling out Ghosts in particular because I do think I would really like that game. It is the kind of stuff that I tend to enjoy. So that's a bummer. I'll definitely pick it up now that I have a PlayStation again. Okay, so 2020 Game of the Year. Let's start back at the bottom and work our way up, because I think, Jeramey, you said that you might not really have one that you think is fitting of Game of the Year, of games that you played this year.
Yes. I did not play any games released in 2020, which is kind of a bummer. I think the only things that would even conceivably fit the criteria would be Mario 3D All-Stars and the Halo Master Chief Collection on PC.
And those are, we talked about this before we went on. Those are both kind of, I mean, they're ports, like, of old games.
Yeah, they're re-releases of old games.
Hard to count.
Hard to count. Brian made a very astute point prior to taping that, in unprecedented times, we go back to the classics. So I think that must have been where my brain was at.
Sure. All right. Then that's easy. What about you, Jake?
Yeah, I was kind of in the same boat that instead of buying a ton of games during quarantine, I kind of dug into the massive Steam catalog that I have. But one game that I did play that technically released in 2020 was Risk of Rain 2. And since that came out in 1.0 this year, I'm going to say that is my game of the year. Because not only is it a fantastic game, but it technically released this year.
That was our group game of the year last year. So we've already showered endless praise on it and tons of videos. But yeah, it slaps.
They did a lot this year too. Like, if you think about where the game was at the beginning of the year versus now.
For sure.
There's been a lot of changes.
Took us a while to beat Mithrix on hard.
Right.
Yeah.
And this was a 1.0 that I think deserves the 1.0 label. It wasn't like PUBG releasing to 1.0 and it was still the same game. Like this, it was a big difference going to 1.0.
Sure. So do you mind if I pick your brain a little? Because I know that you played both Animal Crossing and Half-Life Alyx. I'm mostly curious about Half-Life Alyx.
So Half-Life Alyx probably would get my game of the year, but unfortunately my graphics card died before I could get more than 5 hours into the game. So I don't really think I could give it a fair assessment at this point. Animal Crossing I thought was pretty good, but I think there's big flaws in that game.
For sure.
Primarily that it's really a game that is meant to like pull your attention for like a whole year, and there's just not enough stuff. I mean, no game has enough stuff to entertain someone for like a year. So,
except maybe Risk of Rain.
Except maybe Risk of Rain. But yeah, I mean, we play Risk of Rain all the time, so that's what I went with for this 2020.
Okay, so it's not, you do like Half-Life Alyx a lot. You just didn't get to give it a full shake.
Yeah, I was ripped. Classic 2020, ruining a good experience.
Getting shafted.
Yeah.
All right. And Brian, you said that yours is going to be somewhat short too, right?
Yeah, I mean, I only bought one game that came out in 2020, but I thought Hard Space Shipbreaker was really good. I mean, or it had a lot of potential. I haven't played it in quite a while, but it's one of those things that it's like, hey, I might go back and play that again. And kind of like Risk of Rain, it's a small team, and I really like to see smaller projects kind of succeed. I think they have something good going on. It's not for everyone, but if you like kind of job simulator-y type stuff with a really kind of comprehensive universe around it, it's worth a look.
You said it's pretty punishing, right?
To it, I mean, you can restart and stuff like that, but it's really easy to blow stuff up. Or the last time I played it, it was really easy to blow stuff up. And I don't expect that that's changed too much, because just watching stuff explode is immensely entertaining because of how they do like the particles and how stuff breaks apart. So I don't imagine that they've made that any easier. But you know, it's a little bit of a time sink, which is the big downside to it, I found, but it's still good enough that I would take another look at it.
Cool. And for me, I struggled between three. Well, I think there's three games that were in particularly high quality of games that I played in 2020. Those would be Half-Life, Alyx. I think what caused me to not choose Half-Life is the fact that when I would try to, I mean, it's not a game that you could divorce from VR, but when I try to imagine the game not as a VR game, it's just a really good game. It's not like a fantastic game. It's a great VR game. I don't think it's Game of the Year. Let me put it that way. The next is Demon Souls, which I made a 24-minute long review on, kind of picking it apart. I had a great time with it, but I do think that there are significant flaws. But I really did enjoy my time. Just there were a lot of problems, and I ultimately found it kind of easy, which is weird. So the game that I came down to, which is probably the most contentious of the three that I'm listing, is The Last of Us Part 2. A lot of people hate that game, I guess, but it's one of those games that stuck with me for a while that I struggled with. I mean, I made a big review on it, and I did a big spoiler talk about it. I spent a lot of time thinking about it, and I think what I really liked about Last of Us 2 is that, I mean, this is something I like in general about games, is it tells, or it uses the medium of video games to tell stories or to communicate themes and affect the player in a way that other mediums can't. Like, a lot of video games is just like a cutscene that's completely divorced of the gameplay that you're doing, and The Last of Us uses its gameplay and uses its like character control to force you to feel things and to make you think critically, I guess. So Last of Us 2, it's a good game. That's my 2020 game. Cool.
What an anti-gamer choice.
I know, right?
Why are you fighting the gamer agenda?
What a bad boy. Yeah, I mean, I understand why people were miffed by it, but I think it's a great game. So, I guess we can move on to our favorite games that we played this year. Didn't have to come out this year, but our favorite games that we played this year. And this, if your favorite game, which in this case for me was The Last of Us Part 2, that came out in 2020, you can still highlight a couple games. So I'll just highlight Metal Gear Solid 2. I think that game is more important than ever. I think 2020 was like the year for Metal Gear Solid 2. Also, weirdly, the year for Death Stranding. So good job, Hideo Kojima, for predicting the future. But yeah, Metal Gear Solid 2 is a really good breakdown on information control. And I think it's definitely worth checking out, even if not playing, just interacting with the story. And the other one is Outer Wilds, one of the best games of the generation. It's insanely good, and it does that thing that I like when video games kind of use the medium to do stuff that other artistic mediums can't. And it's the way that it forces you to engage with it. Its world is just unbelievable. Like, every single person possible should play that game. But yeah, those are mine. Guess let's go with Jeramey.
Well, although I didn't play any new games in 2020, I did play some decent older titles. I finished The Witcher 3. I played all the classic Halo games. I spent a lot of time with Mario 64, played Luigi's Mansion 3.
You played Luigi's Mansion 3?
Yeah.
Was that good?
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
You can borrow it. But
Nice.
That's neither here nor there. My game of the year is a game that consumed basically my whole summer, which is Europa Universalis 4. In about 3 months, I put many hundreds of hours into the game. It was just very immersive. It was fun. I'm a history guy, so it was fun to play around with some kind of familiar historical events. It asks a lot of you as a player. I started playing on standard mode, which in Europa Universalis is like Iron Man, like it's got permadeath, so all of your big decisions are kind of baked in once you make them. And I had to restart the game like 3 or 4 times before I even got a decent kind of run going, as it were. Just a, very fun time sink type game.
Great. How does it compare to Civ?
It is much more complicated. I've played a lot of Civ too. I've played a lot of Civ 5, a lot of Civ 6. Just way more mechanics that you have to balance. It plays in real time. It's not turn-based. That's a big change. Just a more, I don't want to say, Civ is a little more elegant, but if you are interested in trying to balance, spreading religion, which you can obviously also do in Civ, but really micromanaging trade and micromanaging, way more detail to everything. So if you like Civ, if you played like say 600 hours of Civ 6, pick up Europa Universalis 4. You will enjoy it.
All right. What about you, Jake?
Before I hit my favorite game, I want to shout out Death Stranding because you mentioned it. If there was ever a game that I wish I could have played during quarantine, it would be Death Stranding. But unfortunately, the planets didn't align on that one. I really wanted to have one of those sweet RTX cards in time to play that game, and it took forever to get one. So they just didn't really align with quarantine. But my favorite game of 2020 was Hunt Showdown, which didn't release in 2020. It's been around for quite a while, and I've played it for a couple of years now. But it is definitely one of my favorite games. It is. I hesitate to call it a battle royale because it is a battle royale, but it does not feel like one. If you go back way into the CFU archives, you'll find an episode where we talk battle royales, and we said if there was ever something we would do to improve the battle royale genre, we would make a better emphasis on killing AI, adding in AI that actually matters. And Hunt Showdown has that. Game's really focused around killing a boss and then competing against all the other players to extract the bounty out after you kill the boss. So it changes the focus from just being the last one alive to a couple of objectives, dealing with enemies on the map, that kind of thing. So it's I think it's like the perfect realization of what Battle Royale is supposed to be. And it's kept me entertained for hundreds of hours throughout 2020. So that would be my top game this year.
I mean, I definitely played it with you. I don't think Brian and Jeremy have.
No, I think just us.
Nah.
It's a weird game.
It is.
It definitely pulled you in, though. You're a big fan of it. Every time I see it on sale, I'm like, maybe this will be the time.
It's set in 1800s Louisiana Bayou, so it's already a weird time period, weird place, but it works so well. And they really put a lot of attention into the details of that game, which I really appreciate.
All right. Well, what about you, Brian? Anything you want to highlight?
So I think that Halo, out of things that came out this year, and I know it doesn't really count because none of those games came out this year, but if you were looking for a video game, just the essence of a video game for 2020, I think you have to go with the Master Chief Collection, because there's not anything particularly special about the games in terms of today's game market and what's groundbreaking and all that, but just kind of the way it was released, where you got one game and then you got 2 months later you got another one, and then it was really quick succession of releasing the new games or the new ports. It created a lot of excitement, even though it wasn't really anything new, and it was just kind of fun to be absorbed in that, I guess. And it does have all the, you go online and there's people screaming profanities at you in the voice chat and all of the other stuff that made Halo so great on console. You can jump on the fence, it's got all that good stuff. So I would say that if you haven't gotten it, it's definitely worth checking out because it's still fun. Stuff that I played a lot of, I'd have to go with Kerbal Space Program 1 because, again, I'm a hopeless nerd. But like, and I've said this before. I think I've used this game in this position.
Yeah, I think you've used it on one of the years.
It kind of takes the other side of the coin that you were talking about with the storytelling, Chris, where it's like you're using the technology to essentially make a movie or a story that you can interact with, and where you're interacting with an artificial world essentially. This is kind of the science and technology side of that, where you're playing with essentially the mechanics that govern the universe with a couple of asterisks, but you know, it's real orbital mechanics, it's real stuff under the hood, and you just learn things without realizing that you're learning things, and the game has layers of complexity that you just get into. You know, you're like, okay, I've done all this and that, and then you find out, oh, this is how going to another planet works, and then you have to figure out all the little idiosyncrasies of that, and it's a really immersive, I find, universe. Despite what's happened to the dev, they've actually come out with a couple of updates, especially the most recent one that was actually just pushed out today, that really improved quality of life for even just people playing the base game. I bought the DLCs this year, which I really liked because, again, I've got hundreds of hours in this game, but even if you're just playing the base game, they're clearly still dedicated to making that experience better despite all of the political stuff that's been going on with the dev. So I like that, you know. It's get back to what you like. I guess if you're gonna put hundreds of hours into something, it might as well be something that you've enjoyed.
Hell yeah.
Right? So that's quarantine, right?
That's quarantine, baby. Speaking of quarantine/2020, if you want to know our thoughts on video games in 2020 as a whole, we have a video coming out shortly about just a 2020 retrospective on the gaming industry. And if you're wondering why Cyberpunk 2077 wasn't on this Game of the Year list, you can wait for my review, which will be coming early 2021, if not very, very end of 2020. But until then, what should our viewers be doing right now, Brian?
Well, if you played any video games in 2020, and you probably did, what were your answers to these 3 questions that we've been doing for the past 4 years? Go ahead and hammer your thoughts on that down in the word box there. And we do occasionally give shit away here on this channel, but you got to be subscribed to get the shit. So go ahead and click that subscribe button, because, you know, if you watched this far, you probably liked it. And smoke them if you get them, guys. That hasn't changed. That's all for me tonight, Chris.
All right. Thank you, Brian, and we'll catch you next time.